Hey there YouTube, welcome back to the garage. I'm Doc, Doc's Motorcycle Service. Rawr, 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 rawr. So in this video today, we are going to talk about hydraulic clutches and flushing them and refilling them. And we're doing this video for two reasons. One, it's an important service item on your motorcycle. You cannot afford a you cannot own a motorcycle and not take care of it. You're either going to have to do that yourself if you're mechanically inclined, or you're going to have to take it to somebody. I'm going to bust a myth right here, and I challenge you to change my mind. Owning and riding a motorcycle is cheaper than owning and driving a car. It is not. And anybody that rides a motorcycle will tell you that. For example, you take my truck out there. I can buy a 50,000 mile rated tire for that truck for how much, Linda? $100 and a half, $150? All right, so I can get a tire for that truck that's rated for 50,000 miles for $150. The tire that will go on this Ultra Classic that we're looking at today, that's $150. If you can find it for $150, is only rated for 10,000 miles. That truck out there, an oil change on that truck, every 5,000 miles is going to run you, what, Linda, $55? $60?
Not that much.
Linda's shaking her head in the back. $55. You take this Ultra Classic to the Harley-Davidson place or somewhere to get an oil change on, it's going to be $75 to $125. All right? Changed my mind. I'm waiting. But with that said, that's why we're here today. Your fluids on your motorcycle, and we're just talking about the fluid maintenance right now. You should have an owner's manual that came with your motorcycle. If you didn't, go online and see if you can buy one used. If you can't, go somewhere like Google Documents and see if you can download one. But you need to be paying attention to this motorcycle. As I've said before, it's your responsibility to make sure that it's functioning correctly. And the way to do that is touch it, feel it, listen to it, but more importantly, ride it. Because the only way you're going to know how it sounds when it's running perfect is to be on it, riding it. It allows you to know what is normal, so your body picks up on what is not normal. And that's a good segue into why we're here today. So, last Friday I was on this motorcycle rolling down the road. Linda, give me some motorcycle sound. No, not a Ninja. I need a Harley motorcycle. Okay, anyway, whatever. We'll get Linda to work on her sound effects. So, riding down the road, getting it Friday afternoon, hot for July, all right? The main interstate was backed up. It was backed up onto the loop interstate. Traffic wasn't moving. I took off to try to find a back road or the other way into the county, and guess what it was backed up to? It was like 98 degrees outside, bumper to bumper traffic. Just didn't want to be there, but had to be there, had to be going somewhere. Go to change gears, pull in on the clutch handle, and instead of fighting it like I normally do, it went to about right there before it grabbed. They call that a clue that there's a problem. I'm like, okay, that's not right. Now, this bike is the first bike that's had a hydraulic clutch on it that I have been on. So, you got two types of clutches on Harley-Davidsons. You got wet clutches and you got dry clutches. Wet clutch is one that has fluid in it, aka hydraulic, but it's .4 brake fluid. But it's still a wet clutch. It's called a hydraulic clutch. Your cable clutch on your older bikes, well, I know in 2008 an Ultra Classic that I had a dry clutch on it, a cable clutch. It has a cable on the clutch handle. When you pull in on the handle, it manipulates a cable that goes down to your transmission and manipulates the clutch spring, which allows tension to come off of the clutch plates and allows you to, I can't get my foot that high, but to change gears. Just like it works in an automobile or a pickup truck. And then when you let back off on it, the springs bring it back together, push it back together, and now you have friction on those clutch plates. So when you turn the zoom zoom handle, everything turns together and you go down the road. Dry clutch, cable. Wet clutch has fluid. This is the first bike that I've been on, this 2013 Ultra Classic, that has a wet clutch on it. So I'm wary about stuff. My father always taught me, drive your truck down the road with the window cracked so you can hear what it's doing. That's why I don't own a diesel. A diesel to me, or at least the old diesels I grew up with, sounded like they were coming apart when they were running perfect. So know the sounds of what it sounds like when it should be doing what it's supposed to. That way when it's not doing what it's supposed to, you can hear that. You can feel that. You can see that. Maybe even smell that if you have a leak somewhere. You feel the change in the bike going down the road. When that clutch handle went in about halfway, I was like, okay, there's a problem. My first thought was, I need to get out of traffic. So I start working my way out of traffic, and as I'm doing so, to get the clutch to engage, the handle was getting closer and closer to the handlebar grip. So I know I've got to get there in a hurry. Fortunately for me, God willing, by the time I got to the outside lane, bam, right there was the gas station. And as I turned to go into it, that clutch lever just bottomed out, and there was nothing I could do. I tried to give it a little throttle, it didn't want to cooperate, and so I did what I used to do and people used to do on your older trucks before you had power brakes and you had to pump that thing to get it to do right. I hit it about 8 or 9 times, got enough pressure built up that I could get it neutral, and then coast it into the parking lot, found a shady spot and let it sit there for about 20 minutes. After about 20 minutes, I felt the clutch lever, the handle, and I had about half clutch. I figured out some back roads to get to where I needed to go. Shady roads, no traffic backed up on them roads. And you may be saying, well, why didn't you go that way to begin with? Well, I was in a hurry. I wanted to go on the main road. Took the back roads to where I needed to go. 3 hours later when I was done, I had a full pedal because everything had cooled off. And I've ridden the motorcycle 2 times since then and everything's fine, but here's the problem. And this is my thought process. And we're going to be using dot 4 today. I've always been told that once a lubricant, whether it's grease or oil or whatever, gets beyond its boiling point, it may function, but it will never function as it should again. For example, and don't quote me on this, but I believe that dot 4 brake fluid, which is what Harley Davidson uses in the 2013s for hydraulic clutch fluid, and it'll tell you on your master cylinder cap or on your clutch master cylinder cap what fluid, and you can also get it out of your owner's manual or service manual that I always preach about. But I believe the boiling point of this is 400, and I believe what happened in there, I believe the reason we lost clutch was one of 2 reasons. The fluid in the motorcycle hydraulic clutch system deteriorated, either due to age or a contaminant. Now, this stuff for some reason loves water, and it will tell you in the service manual that once you do this and you start to replace it, use new dot 4 brake fluid, because pretty much what they say is once you open this, it's going to start getting moisture in it. The problem arises when you have so much moisture in the system and you find yourself in a heavy traffic condition or really hot environment and you hit the boiling point for the fluid. Again, I believe it's 400 for your standard dot 4, but guess what? If you have water in the system, water boils at 212 degrees. So if it gets over 212 degrees, and think about how close this line goes to your exhaust and your engine on a 98-degree day, sitting in 4 lanes of traffic and not moving, down there near the exhaust system in the engine, it could get over 212 degrees in that line, and then that water is going to start to shimmer, and it's going to start to boil, and it's going to create a vapor, and that vapor is going to fill in the area between your clutch and your handle and separate that fluid. And guess what happens if that happens? It's the same thing as an air bubble when you have to bleed the brakes in your pickup truck or your car or your motorcycle. If you have this much of an air bubble in your brake line and you go to squeeze this, the fluid is going to compress. But if it does not get to the other fluid, if it doesn't get past that fluid's not going to push on down into the clutch and do what it's supposed to do. So today, Linda and I are going to delve into this system. If you read your owner's manual, the service manual, it will tell you to take the motorcycle and put it on a jack and get the motorcycle level. And the purpose for that is simple. With it on the jiffy stand, if there's no way to manipulate the handlebars in order to get the reservoir level so you can take the cap off of it and get into it without spilling it everywhere. Also, brake fluid is corrosive. Take measures, and we're going to show you what we're going to do today to cover up your painted surfaces. So, and also before I forget, don't forget the Facebook page. Check it out. So let's get into this. We're going to get the motorcycle leveled up. We're going to get our tools and everything put together. We're going to get Linda clocked in on the clock so we can pay her. Not. And we're going to dig into this. So we got the motorcycle on the John Jack. Again, it's just a basic scissor jack, but we call it the John Jack because in the beginning when we got started with this, a friend of mine named John had this type of jack, and I borrowed it from him to see if I liked it, and sure enough I did, and I used it so much I bought him a new one to replace it and kept this one. And the key thing about what we're doing here today is also safety. If you'll notice, the front wheels are turned to the right. So make sure you're on a good flat surface, and make sure that you have adequate room on the top of the jack on both sides before you start to jack it up in the air, and make sure you're on a good flat surface. Keep in mind that when the bike is on the jiffy stand, it's leaning to the left, so you'll have a lot less on this side looking at it when you start to jack it up for it to be in the proper place after it's set upright. With the bike in the proper position and the handlebars turned to the right, you'll notice that our master cylinder, our hydraulic clutch master cylinder is now level. So when we remove the two screws and pull the cap off, there'll be no chance of anything washing over the sides and spilling onto the painted surfaces. As we said in the beginning, this stuff is corrosive and it will eat paint. So what we're going to do here, and this is a little tech tip, is Linda is covering the fuel tank and the lower fairing with a black plastic trash bag and a magnet. The reason we're using a black trash bag instead of a t-shirt or a rag is because t-shirts and rags, cloth, will absorb the brake fluid. And if it falls, you might not notice it falling until it has soaked through the rag and gotten to your paint. So we're holding the trash bags in place with a small magnet. Actually, Linda, keep turning them out until you feel them click. You'll feel them try to jump out of the hole. And that's a sign that they're completely out of there. All right, now as she brings it off, she's going to hold it over the paper towel. Bring it over here and turn it toward the camera. And right here is your master cylinder gasket. And I'm going to zoom in because I want to show you something. When I push this, it should flop back down in. But that bubble, if you can see it popping back out there, tells me that it's been pressurized for a while. What we're going to do is we're going to investigate this, because this should be down flat like this, and it should stay like that. It may have had too much pressure in it, but then again, it could have happened that way because it overheated. And now we're going to lay it on a flat surface that's nice and clean, face down. Linda's going to take her paper towel and just wipe around the edge of the reservoir to make sure that there's no dribbles there that could get on the chrome or the paint. Ooh, that's yucky. I don't know if you can see that or not, but that is really nasty in there. New brake fluid should be clear as water, and you'll see that when we open the new bottle, but that's yucky. This needs to be replaced. Alright, the next step in this process is to remove the chrome cover on the right side of the transmission. You'll see once we get this cover off that the line from the hydraulic clutch master cylinder that runs down into the fairing goes in front of the engine, then behind the exhaust, beside the engine, and up to the connection for the transmission. Is that a chrome? There we go. Alright, and what you see inside here is the line coming to the transmission, and right here is a bleeder valve. This is the same type of bleeder valve that you have on your calipers when you have to bleed your brakes, either on a motorcycle or a vehicle. So what we're going to do now is get our handy dandy pump, and we're going to talk a minute about that. This is the Mighty Vac from Napa. Most all of your auto parts stores sell something similar to this, and there's actually some pneumatic ones out there that run off of an air compressor. Now, you can do this job with one person, and you can do this job without this piece of equipment, but doing it by yourself is going to be tedious, and it's going to be messy. If you've ever bled or attempted to bleed brakes on anything, you notice that, like on a pickup truck, you have to pump it, hold the pump down, or hold the brake pedal down, while somebody loosens the bleeder valve, and you listen to it go until you get a good solid flow, and then you lock it down with pressure on it, come back, top off the reservoir, and you're good to go. The problem with that is, unless you're sitting there holding that bleeder valve with a wrench, with a rag or something to keep that fluid's under pressure, so when it comes out it's going to splatter all over everything. Again, keep in mind it's corrosive. Underneath the bottom of a vehicle, it's not as important as it is right here on a motorcycle with a fancy paint job. This kit is going to allow us to hand pump and flush this system two ways. It should give us an adapter to suck this nastiness out of the reservoir, because there's no sense in trying to flush that nastiness through the hose and out the bottom down there. So what we're going to do first is hook this thing up, and it comes with many different hookups. You'll see that in a minute. And the cool part is it has a reservoir here that will catch it. On the bottom end, the nasty fluid coming through will land in this catch cup while the air goes out the other side. And again, what we're going to do is use this to clean this out, fill this up, put a different attachment on this, on the bleeder valve down there, loosen the bleeder valve, and then start pumping. This is a tech tip. You got to keep this reservoir full while you're pumping, because as you manipulate this handle, the fluid level here is going to start to go down. So we'll suck this out, we'll fill it back up, and as it goes down here, because it's coming out down there, once it turns clear, we know we have fresh fluid here and fresh fluid down there. The system will be flushed. But more importantly, by doing it this way, once we get clear fluid from here to the bottom, she'll hold that handle in, maintaining pressure on it, tighten the bleeder valve back tight. We'll come here, top it off as necessary, put the cap on, and we're done. Also keep in mind, there's a window on this side here, and I'll show you a picture of that, that tells you whether or not the system's full. Do not fill it all the way up to the top. Do you see how that gasket is below the bottom right here? You have to leave room in here for this gasket to go in there. If it's too full, the gasket will displace the fluid in here and it'll wash over the side. Plus you want to make sure that this is nice and dry up here and on the gasket as well before you put it back in. So we got our mounting back out, we got our hand pump here, we have it run to an in and an out right here, and we have a small nozzle on the tip that will allow us to get down into the cracks and crevices. And the way this thing works is, as you pull in on this, it creates suction all the way through here to the end. The fluid will come, fall in here, air will pass over to here. And as you can see, as I'm working, it comes and it fills into the cup right there. You can see it working. Ew, that's nasty. You're just going to have to keep working it a little bit. Look at that nastiness coming through the tube. Can you see that? And just take it and hand pump it until you get all the way down in here. God, that's nasty. Ew. Ew, look at that. Okay, so now we got the reservoir cleaned out. Is just take this and fill that back up. Now while we're doing this, it's okay to fill this up pretty full because we don't want air bubbles to get out of it. You heard when I was manipulating this thing a while ago, it was going that means it was running out of fluid. If we were doing that on the bottom end, we would have gotten an air bubble in the line, and we would have had to keep doing that until we got that air bubble out. So you can see already it's clean, but Linda, look straight down in that thing. If you can see the chrome piece in the bottom, the black on the side, that's nastiness. We're going to have to continue flushing that out. So now we're going to get the Mighty Vac down on the transmission. And don't forget, like I said, this stuff right here attracts moisture. So don't leave it open while you're doing other stuff. Okay, so apparently Harley has a special sized bleeder valve on here. And I'm going to use an adjustable wrench to break it loose and then tighten it back up. I don't like this, but it's the way it's going to have to be. There you go. Now we'll use a pretty close wrench just to manipulate it while we're doing what we're doing. So now we're going to swap out our suction nozzle with a fitting that will fit over the bleeder tube. And because of the way these are made, you're just going to use an inline connection. Push it on, past the ribs, then push that one into here. Stow your other nozzle and you're ready to go to work. Now we loosened this fitting, but we didn't completely take it out. We only turned it about a quarter of a turn. We're going to put our nozzle on here, and keep in mind, if this nozzle does not fit perfectly tight on here, there's a couple of ways that you can overcome that. You can put a zip tie on here, and once you have it on the fitting, cinch it down, or you can put a small hose clamp on it. Now if you do use the hose clamp like we're having to here, keep in mind you're not trying to tie down a raging bull. You're just going to tighten it down until it's snug around the rubber. Alright, that should be good. Is it going down? Mm-hmm. As you can see, down here on the bottom, coming right through here, we're still getting some dark, nasty fluid coming through. And we want to continue doing that until we're getting nothing but clear. As you can see, we got a little dirty spot down here in the bottom, and it's just really not one. There we go. Now we got it. Still going down, Linda? So we got nothing but clear coming through it now. So we're going to hit this, give it some pressure, And then we're going to come in here and tighten that back. Got a couple little dribs and drabs here. This is what this floor looked like when we put it down 18 years ago. And it cut through 18 years worth of grease and grime in just a couple minutes. That's why we take the precautions to cover our paint. Go take a paper towel and just wipe around this to make sure there's nothing on the outside. Make sure there's no contaminants right there in that lid. If you happen to get too much in it above the fill line, just take you a paper towel, dab in it, let it absorb some of it up, carefully move it away. Remember, you got to have room for all this gasket material in here, and you do not want it to overflow. Now, lining this thing back up, like I told you in the past, turn your screw backwards until it jumps. You hear it? And make sure that your threads are lined up. Run this one down, come over here, do the same. Hear it jumping? Run this down. Have a paper towel ready for anything that might squirt out. And you don't want to kill this. Just make sure you check your service manual, owner's manual, for proper tightness. I'm going to give it a quarter grunt. Coming out there. Linda was on point. Checking it again because my eyes are old. So we got our reservoir cap back on. We're good. We got no leaks around here. Now, the first time that you hit this thing, it may flatten out just because it's just doing its thing and it's cycling right. And built up pretty good. When you get done with this thing, make sure you clean up your area real good. Make sure you check for any spills or leaks underneath the bike before you get back on it. This stuff's real slippery. Your foot gets in it, slip, go down, you go drop your bike. Make sure that your bleeder valve fitting is nice and tight. Make sure that you got a good clutch or a good clutch handle lever pressure up here, and then take it for a test ride. Don't take it out on the interstate for a test ride. Just take it for a test ride in your neighborhood. Remember, you're not testing its speed and its stopping ability. You're testing whether or not it's changing and clutching correctly. So you can do that on your own street. Again, remember, this stuff's corrosive. Wipe it up. Take preventative measures to keep it from getting on your paint and stuff like that. When you're done, go ahead and throw this away. This thing's like $6 or $7 a bottle. Once that seal has been broken, you just can't keep moisture out of it. I mean, it grabs moisture just that quick. One of the things you might want to consider is a water indicator, a moisture indicator. They make them for $6 or $7. They're electronic, and you just pull your cap off, stick it in there. It tells you how much water you have in your system. You're allowed to have a little bit. I don't know what that percentage is. Even if I did, I'm not going to tell you because I don't want you to come back and screaming and hollering at me. This is what I'm going to tell you. It doesn't matter if you ride that thing once a year or every day. Every 2 years, you need to be following the maintenance plan that's outlined on your motorcycle. So anyway, there you go. Thanks for coming by the garage. If I haven't already said so, check out the Facebook page, and we'll see you in the next video. And cut!